is pretty cool. It's actually my library wall. I'm in my music room.
I'm going to follow you, Mason, on the gram.
Oh, we are go. I got the word go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Adagio Live, the place where classical music happens, even if the downbeat is slightly delayed sometimes. We had a little bit of a glitch getting on this evening, but we are here now. I'm going to bow out. I just wanted to say thank you to my host this evening, Joel Thompson, who is also in cahoots with Eugene Rogers this month, University of Michigan, sponsoring the Tuesday evening Adagio Live with Thomas about song and about music and actual construction. We have a really wonderful program tonight. Joel, take it away. Wonderful composers, wonderful colleagues. I couldn't be more excited. Thank you all for being part of this. I know our public is just going to love it. It's fantastic. So I will say goodbye at some point. I will just disappear in the middle of your conversation, but be listening. Bye all. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And thank you all for being here. I'm so excited that we finally got into the Zoom room and were able to talk to each other and have a conversation. And thank you for being so gracious with your time. So I think what I'd like to do is maybe let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Let's do it in alphabetical order according to our last name. So I guess that puts you first, Jasmine.
All right. Hi, I'm Jasmine Barnes. What do I say about myself? I'm a composer. I'm a vocalist. I am a teacher. I kind of wear a lot of hats, but I enjoy all of the hats that I wear. I guess that makes sense. So I love writing. I love anything musical. I love thinking of things as I'm singing and improvising, and so I like to create on the spot. Like that's
Nice.
Kind of my thing. So
how about let's add to that introduction where you're currently based.
Oh, that would help too, right? I'm in Dallas, Texas. Here I actually teach at Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts, and I'm the head of composition here, and that I love.
Awesome.
It's not in this time, in the pandemic, but
I'll probably have some questions about COVID-tied education, so be prepared for that. How about you, Mason?
Hey you guys, my name's Mason Bynes and I'm a Boston-based composer and trained vocalist. I'm from Sugar Land, Texas, which is right outside of Houston. I'm a second-year master's student in composition at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley and finishing that up this year. If I could describe my music in a nutshell or like a snapshot, I'd say that I have a very pastiche style of composing. I like to bring a lot of different genres together because it brings people together and listeners together. And I like to genre bend, I guess, with bringing different things together.
Awesome. And we'll hear a little bit more of that later. And now, Jessie.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Joel.
Hi.
Hi, Mason, Jasmine, hi. I am Jessie Montgomery. I'm a composer and a violinist, and I'm currently based in, Princeton, New Jersey is where I've been hunkering down during this pandemic, originally from New York City, though. And writing, this is a big orchestra year, symphonic year. Doing a lot of symphonic big writing this year. So that's where my head is at right now. Mm-hmm.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I'm Joel Thompson, composer and fan of all of these wonderful composers joining me today. And I'm currently based in New Haven, Connecticut, although I did spend the last 2 weeks in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a COVID hotspot. So I got my COVID test this morning, got the swab up the nose, and I'll get my results tomorrow. But I'm hunkering down here for, the required 14 days according to Connecticut law. So Yeah, I'm glad to start it off with some social interaction though. So this is great. So I guess the first question I have, let's start with Mason. What's your earliest musical memory? I'd just like to get to know you as a composer and a musician, and also have our audience get to know you as well. So what's your earliest musical memory?
Oh, that's a really cool question. I'm trying to think, like, I would say, you know, I've been singing for a long time, so like I grew up in church and sang a lot, but I would say as far as it relating to kind of composing and stuff like that, I would say I was really drawn to the piano and being able to hear something and like figure it out on the piano first and like play it first before actually learning it. So I'd say earliest musical like memories are like growing up singing in church and then trying to figure out songs on the piano at the age of like 7 or 8.
Right. Yeah. So like it was mostly just listening to things and then trying to figure it out on the keys by ear before you had any music in front of you.
Yeah, I was really nerdy growing up with music, and I loved being able to like figure out stuff and be like, look, you know, put me in piano lessons for a year. And then I kind of gave that up. I wish I didn't, but yeah, that's kind of how it started. And
awesome. Great. What about you, Jasmine?
So I call myself a late bloomer as far as music goes, because I actually didn't really care to get involved in music until high school. And in that capacity, I was actually in the band and I wasn't singing at all. So I didn't actually sing until college, which is hilarious to most people because like that was like the primary thing that I've done in my music career. That's like the first thing that I stuck my fingers in. But I would say my earliest musical memory though, definitely is church, just like Mason said as well. It's definitely church. Both of my parents are pastors, actually. My grandmother's a preacher. I literally grew up in church every day of the week, like that serious. So, my musical memories actually have a lot to do with a cappella singing, which makes sense because, you know, in church sometimes, you know, you might have a musician, you might not. And we did have a really great musician. And so she would sing and play the piano as well. So I always thought like, oh, she's like, I want to do that, you know, and that like that idea, I want to be able to do that. And my grandmother, you know, harmonizing in church, you know, all that good stuff. So I just, my musical influence actually, I don't know, I wasn't inspired as much because of traumatic experience in like middle school. And then, okay.
All right. Well, if you feel vulnerable enough to share that later, we might get there, but if not, that's fine. Jessie, what about you? What's your earliest musical memory?
So, I mean, I grew up in a sort of unusual situation, which was that both of my parents are artists, and my dad had a music studio that he was kind of running out of our house, my loft, that we lived in a loft, you know, in the Lower East Side, Manhattan. And it was like a former bakery that was like burnt out. And then like we lived there, like my dad. Anyway, so my dad, had all this instrument set up, and a bunch of his friends, they just come over and like jam. So it was like people downtown, like Lower East Side, downtown, you know, jazz and like funk and Latin musicians, just kind of like jamming out in my house. So that was, I remember that kind of atmosphere very vividly.
Nice. So let's stick with you, Jessie.
Sure.
I think some of your pieces have that sort of polystylistic lean towards it, and it's obvious that it might be rooted in this early memory you have of being interacting with all of these different musicians. Can you tell me how you came to the decision to be a composer, and also how you came to different ways you found to explore this sort of polystylistic thing in your music.
Sure. So having decided to become a composer, you know, that was like a moment. Really, I mean, I had been writing, you know, in high school and stuff, but when I was out of my undergrad and I was playing with a string quartet regularly, I was feeling like I didn't feel confident about my interpretive skills as a violinist. You know, like I was really fishing to like really believe what I was thinking about, like, let's say Beethoven quartet or whatever we were working on. Like, I just didn't like believe, I was on, you know, I wasn't confident in my interpretation. I thought, well, if I start writing, if I really take this writing thing seriously and work on interpreting my own music with others, maybe that'll help me as a violinist. And because I was so devoted to chamber music and, you know, the canon and et cetera. And I was, you know, so I was like, this will be great. I'll exercise this other side of myself and also strengthen, hopefully, like my skills as a interpreter or whatever. So, and I have to say, I mean, it certainly has freed me up, you know, when looking at, right, when looking at the masterworks as they are, you know, to have the sense from the other side that like, okay, that the composition itself is living and breathing. Yes, it's printed on a piece of paper and it's like this hard copy of something, but it's, you know, when we write these ideas down, they're elastic, you know. And so as a violinist reading like a Mozart quartet, I can be way more free in my approach to it as, you know, as a player, and get into those beautiful, like fun chamber music arguments about like, which phrase is of most importance and what speed and rubato or no rubato, you know,
right.
All these things. And so it just made that process a lot more interesting. And, you know, and just to tie in the second part of your question, you know, I have been then thinking a lot about, you know, classical music as my training being the base for, it's the sort of like technical base for all of the other kinds of music that I'm interested in exploring, right? So that's jazz, that's music from Africa, that's Celtic music, that's like you know, like Gregorian chant and like all kinds of all over the map. I mean, I'm just, you know, anyway, and like, so, and I just, you know, use that. It's such a rich platform, you know, like orchestral music or classical music in terms of the long form. So I'm like really looking at like what does long form do? What is it doing musically? And how do I, and, you know, look at how these other influences can sort of intermingle within these like larger forms. Yeah.
I see lots of head nods from our fellow composers. It seems like a lot of what you said resonated with them. I'm curious, Mason, you also mentioned your tendency to genre bend. Can you tell me like more specifically what that means and how that may connect or maybe not connect with what Jessie just said about her way of putting things together?
Yeah, it totally connects with what Jessie said. I was really bobbing my head to everything you said. Yeah, so like, and just to talk about like where I'm at now with my music, when I started composing, it started with doing singing Valentines in high school. Me and my friends would sell Valentines for choir, and I would make the arrangement and accompany us on guitar. And then to like help us market during lunch, we would put two different songs together. So like an old song and a new song to sell to teachers, but also like to our friends who were children. So like that is what still kind of guides my spirit as like a composer now. I like the main thing that I like about composing is the collaboration. I was also loved what Jessie said about the music being, you said like elastic, or like it's you're still able to give it another life, or my goal is to make it accessible so that it can have another life, and be interpreted by a lot of different people, a lot with so many different backgrounds of music, interests, dislikes as well, and finding a way to bring both of those listeners together and take them on a journey together. So also with my music, I like to really, like a lot of people, support a narrative, but in the sense of by any means necessary. So like whether it's bringing those genres together and having an audiovisual underlay or some type of sound design or some type of visual that allows the listener to transcend, whether they're just sitting there listening, transcend from their seat, or if they're in the hall or in the performance space, being able to connect to something and then see something or listen to something that they haven't heard before, but still be willing to go along on the journey. So that's how I would describe it.
Awesome. And Jasmine, I know you're also a professor of jazz as well, like vocal jazz, right? At Booker T?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's this whole polystylistic performance thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that plays a role in your composition?
I kind of feel like along the way in my life, I've just picked up things and just collected, and it's just is now this what is, my compositions now. I think I just was having this conversation actually yesterday with my librettist for an opera that I'm writing. And I was talking about how like where words fail, like music really like picks that up. And because like me personally, I think I'm just really, maybe in the last couple of years, just really discovering like my voice in composition and like how I want to communicate. And tearing down some of the things mentally in my head that says this is too simple, or this is like not enough, or like just that kind of stuff like that, when in reality some of the best compositions are incredibly simple and they build along the way instead of just being technically complex the entire time. The other thing is what does that even mean? Like, what does complex or simple even mean as far as composition goes? And like me debunking that for myself really helped me be able to communicate better. So that has been like one of the big things for me. I so loved what you said, Jessie, about music being elastic, because it's true. In real time, things will be whatever the performer feels is most beautiful. So it almost feels like as a composer, we need to give space for the performers to have a say, because we can write all these things and they might say, well, I think I'm going to take this liberty differently. And that's okay. And that's totally okay, because we live in musicians, we live in a give and take environment. We live in an environment where we feed off of each other. So I think for me, discovering myself in that, in being okay with it, like, and just actually writing to write, not writing to like, appease to someone else's ear or to what is already acceptable. Really just write it just because I like it, and because, well, I like the way that sounds, so I'm gonna write it.
Yes, I think that's so refreshing to hear. And the thing is, well, I don't know, maybe I don't want to go there yet, but I'll just ask. No. I'll hold that for later. Let's see. Actually, let's listen to some music. I would like our listeners to understand a little bit about what you all sound like compositionally. So how about let's start with Mason. I think I'm going to play a little bit of your Hades Pillage, a piece for solo cello. And could you just introduce it while I set up the share screen so that I could share that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm super excited that this one's going to be shared for today. So that piece I wrote an collection of music that was inspired by Greek mythology, specifically the story of Persephone. And so it's basically kind of giving an all-encompassing view of who Hades was, who we know him to be this violent, kind of gross god, but he also has this really weird, twisted sense of sweetness or love for I wrote this and it just kind of it expresses an all-encompassing view of how complex Hades is as a Greek god.
All right, here we go. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So, so the piece is about Hades himself and the complicated nature of the god of the underworld.
So, sorry. I also have another piece called Hades that is a solo bass piece. This is the solo piece, my mistake.
Okay.
It's the second movement of a work for cello called Persephone. And so it's in three movements. The first movement is the vision of Persephone, and it kind of expresses how she's in the garden and picking these flowers with her friends. And then the second movement is Hades' pillage, where he comes up from hell and snatches her and then brings her to the underworld. And then the third movement is actually played in darkness, and it's called the Queen of the Underworld, because that's who she becomes. And it's a whole bunch of like tremolos and double stops and darkness.
So it's written in the score to be performed in darkness.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, cool. And Jasmine, I'd like to play an excerpt of your Flowers from Songs of the African Violet. Carl Alexander is the countertenor on that. Would you mind giving us a little introduction so we can listen to some of that?
Is this the one from my website?
Yes.
Okay, actually, it's Leah Hawkins on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was commissioned by Carl Alexander. But I will say, so when I was asked to write for the Voiced project, which it was a composition project of various composers that spoke to whatever we felt most comfortable to speak about as far as being composers of color. And so I felt I wanted to write a song cycle about African-American women, and about how our place in, I wouldn't say place, but I would say maybe the neglect of the Black woman in America. And so this whole song cycle it kind of just talks about the beauty of Black women. This particular song, Flowers, is about, water your flowers, like meaning what us being Black women being the flowers, just telling people to nurture us and love us. Like, you should.
Who wrote the text? Who wrote the text?
I wrote the text.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. All right.
I started working with librettists like more recently, but I'm the text person as well.
Okay, awesome. So we'll only have time just to listen to a little bit of it. So I would encourage those listening to go and visit her website, and you can listen to the whole thing and even download it too and join her mailing list. But here's the third movement of Songs of the African for the African Violet, Flowers. I was trying to do a slow fade out, but yeah, beautiful work, Jasmine. Yeah, I'm curious. I have some questions about it and your process. Being a vocalist yourself, I'm curious if having the music in your body is a part of the process before you write it down, or when you're writing songs or setting text, is it helpful not to engage with it first, so that for some reason? I'm just curious.
So, all right. So it's funny because I also teach singer-songwriter as well at Booker T. I kind of teach I just do a lot of things there. But my process is like, if I'm writing the text myself, my process is to get the idea out as a poem first, and then actually sing everything. Like I sing what I want written in it. I'll sing the violin part. I'll sing the piano part. I'll sing I'll like visually have to like sing it. That's the way I visualize my music. Like,
wow, okay,
that makes sense. So like when I think about what I want to hear, I like have to hear it literally. I know that's like, it sounds crazy, but it's the same way Mason was talking about like going to the piano and like figuring things out. My mental process is all in my head. And
you
so
figure it out through your voice.
And sometimes like if I hear like specific chords or different things like that, most of the time I can just identify them. But if it's not like a chord that we necessarily identify per se, literally spell it out in my head and then I sing each note. Now when I write for vocalists, I always am very conscious about lines and how and where to breathe, and if you want to breathe, and if you know something will be too wordy or too text, you know, too mouthy, which as singers we really don't like that. Like we really don't like a whole lot of words. Like we can literally sing one word in a whole song and milk it, like just
with the right vowel, right?
The right vowel. It has to be a vowel. Okay, give us vowels. So I think about these things like when I'm writing, and then I think and especially like when I teach my composition students, I'm always like, ask people that play the instruments that you don't play. Ask people that, you know, ask before you just write something and say, well, child, figure it out. Right? For me, I'm a vocalist. So if I have a question about an instrument I don't play, which I play the trumpet, brass instruments I actually play. So I'm familiar with, and percussion, I'm familiar with percussion techniques. But when it comes to woodwinds, baby, I don't know. Okay, so I ask people. I will take my bassoon playing friends and my clarinet friends, and I'll ask them, like, is this comfortable? Is this something that, you know, you would normally do, or is it, you know, typical for something you do? Well, I don't do it as much anymore because I have an understanding of it, but if it's real crazy, I'll be like, let me know. But so that's my process.
Awesome. Well, Jessie is primarily a string person, being a violinist. So you have a resource right there. Hopefully after this, you can call her if you need some string advice. But Jessie also has some choral music. I'm a huge fan of her setting of some Langston Hughes Danse Africaine, or I don't know how to. African. Yeah. African. Yeah, really good. You should check that out. I didn't choose to share that, but it's a really good performance by the Young People's Chorus of New York, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But I wanted to share one of my favorite pieces of yours, Strum, with you performing in the Catalyst Quartet. I was wondering if you could set that up for us as I try and find that.
Sure. So Strum is like, it's actually like the first piece that I was like received money for, like received a commission for.
Okay.
And it was like by my friend, like my colleagues in Rhode Island that I was working with at the time that commissioned me to write this piece. And it was actually originally for cello quintet because they were going to do the Schubert cello quintet. So there's the original version is actually for 2 cellos, but you'll hear the string quartet version here. But it's it's fun. I mean, it was like the first time I was like, okay, I'm going to write this serious piece because I'm getting paid money and it's going to be like, you know. So I really took my time with it, and I was like, you know, I just like I was learning the Dvorak American at the time. And so there's a little bit of like chugga 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 Dvorak influence in there. You'll hear, but it's
for me, like it was hard to find a chunk that I could play this because the whole piece needs to be experienced. It's just like there's this like stop in the middle, and then there's this amazing ending. But I think I'm just going to play the beginning of it, and hopefully people will be intrigued enough to go and listen to the rest of it.
Sounds good.
So here, my screen has failed. Screen sharing has failed. Okay, let's see. Let me try that again. There we go. Can we see that? Yes. Oh. stop right there, but wow. Yeah. I know we're running out of time. We started late. I don't know if we should go over or if we should stop at 2. I'm not sure. I have so many questions for all of you. I think we just scratched the tip of the iceberg. But how about this? Since we're coming to a close, I'd like. I mean, I haven't drawn attention to the fact that you are all Black women, but you are. And you know, we were talking earlier about. I mean, it was. Oh gosh, I don't want to wade into a quagmire at the end of this, but it should be said that I think that I'm glad that all of you are creating music in this world that needs you. Like classical music needs us. I mean, we're lucky to have you as composers, like writing in this style and bringing all of who you are. And it's been so ignored for so long. Like Florence Price is now famous after her death. And so I'm glad that people are listening to your music right now, you know, and appreciating your music right now. Yeah, I just wanted that to be said because, I mean, it's sort of radical, you know, your presence in this, you know, is so radical because we've been historically marginalized, and especially you as women. And so thank you for making music. And why don't we share what you are writing right now? Is there something a project that you're working on right now that you'd like us to know about that's really exciting for you? Mason?
Yeah, it kind of goes along with what we need in music and activism currently in our you know, where we are right now in the world. But I have a commission with the Westerlies. They're a New York-based brass ensemble, and I am writing a piece for them called For Rosa, and it's scheduled to be performed at the Festival for New Trumpet Music on September 11th, but also if COVID is laid to rest by the end of this year, will be performed at the Rosa Parks Museum in Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh, wow, awesome.
But I'm really grateful for that collaboration, and yeah, really awesome that I get to write music for that.
Great. What about you, Jasmine?
So I just finished writing a 10-minute opera for Bear Opera in New York, and it's a horror like 10-minute opera. Yeah, it's like
horror opera. I can't wait.
And obviously it's gonna be recorded virtually, like you know, social distance wise. But yeah, so that's exciting. That's really cool. And then I'm continuing to work on the opera that is my own with my friend Joshua. And the point of us writing this opera, and I really think it's important to note, is because we wanted to write a Black opera that didn't have negative stereotypes, that wasn't about like any type of Black struggle, really completely just a fairy tale, like a Black fairy tale, which we don't really get to see. And it's based in Chad in Africa. So it's like, we're excited to do that. I'm excited to do that. So, awesome. I just wrote a piece for Karen Slack.
Oh, nice.
For Lyric at Philadelphia. And that'll be premiering in September too. So I'm super excited about those.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I've been watching some of your online talks with Joshua, and you incorporated some Carnatic music, some Indian Carnatic music. That was a really cool watch.
Yeah. Well, we realized how closely linked, we know this already, but how closely linked India is to Africa before it broke off. And the setting time period of our opera is in primordial Lake Chad, like in the surrounding area while it was thriving, while the lake was like fully thriving. So like during that time, Carnatic singing, more than likely, we don't know, because, you know, as far as like recordings go, it's not a thing of that time period, but Carnatic singing, the Moors actually, historically, the Moors taught Indians how to sing Carnatically. So I think that's important to note too. So yeah.
Sweet. So that music is incorporated in that opera that you're writing with him?
Yep. That, jazz, a few things.
Awesome. Great. Jessie.
Wow, it just sounds so fast. I cannot wait to hear these pieces.
What are you saying?
Yeah. I am working I'm working on my commission with the New York Philharmonic.
We're so proud.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and that was originally supposed to be performed on September 19th, or the opening September concert, but now it's been pushed back to the spring. So I'm not so worried. I'm not so. That's much better for me because I gives it a little more time. But yeah, so working on that and really kind of thinking of it. This piece is going to be. It's a little abstract still. I mean, it's going to be in 5, short movements rather than one long stretch. I found that this summer I was needing to write in small chunks rather than large chunks, rather than epic, forms. And sort of loosely based on a bunch of sketches that I've been working on around like groove settings and like certain colors that I'm trying to figure out and explore, or experiment with some different orchestration that's different for me in my own language and stuff. So so roughly based on groove settings and like song and chant.
I can't wait to hear all of these. And I'm sure Thomas Hampson himself wouldn't mind, some songs if you have the chance later on in your schedules. You want to set some songs for people to sing. But yeah, so glad that you got to share your music and we got to, hear about your process and learn a little bit more about you in this conversation. I wish there was a part 2 to this part 2, but maybe we'll have that when we're off live. But I think I want to respect your time because you did agree to an hour and we already went over. So thank you so much for your time today. And I hope that we get to hear more of your music later on.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, no problem.